All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our AAPI month panel. This is the Family Matters panel, and we are celebrating Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Book Month. And so I'm really excited to be here with these amazing authors. My name is Katrina Moore. I am the author of the picture books One Hug and Grandpa Grumps, and we have a great panel today. So I'm going to let the authors introduce themselves. Gail, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'm Gail Villanueva, and I'm the author of My Faith According to the Butterfly. And my book, this is actually my debut, and I have another one coming up on spring 2021. That's still a long way to go. Yeah, and I'm Filipino, and I'm based here in the Philippines, specifically in Cainta, Rizal.
Wonderful. Oh yeah, that was another thing I wanted to say. We are kind of all over the world. I'm Chinese American, and I'm based in New Jersey. So you are in the Philippines. I'm in New Jersey. Remy, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. I'm in Australia, so
wow.
Yeah. I'm the author and illustrator of Pie in the Sky, and my next one is Fly on the Wall. It's coming out in September. And I'm of Chinese descent, but I was born in Indonesia, but I grew up in Singapore, and now I live in Australia.
Remy's everywhere.
So cool. Tiff, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Tif Marcelo, and I'm a romance and women's fiction author. So I write in the adult space. I wrote the Journey to the Heart series, and my 2 contemporary fiction novels are behind me. That is The Key to Happily Ever After, and my most recent is Once Upon a Sunset. And I am based here in the DC area, although we're a military family. So this is like our home for now. But I grew up in San Francisco, and I was born in Quezon City in the Philippines.
Wonderful. And Sheetal, do you want to go next?
Tiff, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Sheetal Sheth, and I live in New York, although I'm in Pennsylvania at the moment. I am the author of Always Anjali, which is a picture book series. This is the first one. The next one will be out next fall, which seems like forever, as you mentioned, forever ago. I'm also an actress, creator, and producer. So telling stories is what I love to do.
Wonderful. All right. So my first question for you all, we're obviously here talking about family matters. And so family is a big theme in your books. So can you share more about that and how your own family made its way into your book or inspired your writing? And we'll just start again with Gail.
Yeah, sure. Actually, the funny thing is that this book isn't, family isn't just major theme in My Faith According to the Butterfly. It's actually where the whole plot revolves around. So it's about Sab, this one, who sees the butterfly of death, and she believes she's going to die within 7 days. So because of a superstition, and then what she wants before she dies is to have her family reunited. And in the process, like, she gets to know her family a little bit better and finds out things that aren't exactly, you know, um, what you want to know at age 11. And it becomes a bit complicated. She realizes that her family is complicated, but at the same time, it's what makes her family special. And there's also the top. It's actually a introduction into the Philippine war on drugs and recovery and forgiveness. So as you can see, it's basically about family and how families cope with crisis like addiction. But there isn't addiction in my family. It's not what inspired the relationship between the older sister with Sab, between Sab and her older sister, is kind of like inspired. Actually, no, not just kind of like. It was inspired by my relationship with my own sister. Uh, the thing here is that my sister is schizophrenic, so, and there's just the 2 of us, just It's me and her. I'm the older one. So I just got to the idea of I wonder what my sister might be thinking. Like if she's left alone and something like, the idea of like me dying, like would she feel like threatened about it? Does she think about it? So I was wondering about like writing something about that relationship, um where a sister is very much how to could describe this. It really admires her older sister to a point that everything that her older sister says, she takes it at face value. So that kind of relationship, because I'm 5 years older than my sister, and Sab, I think, is like the age gap is kind of big, like 8 years. So it gets like the dynamics of it. That was definitely inspired by that. And there are things about my sister, like she worries a lot. She's a great artist, and Sab is a great artist as well. And they even share the same medium, favorite medium. Sab in the story loves some oil pastel, and of course, my sister is like is really great with oil pastel. I wish I brought one of her paintings here, but it's amazing. And when she read it, she knew it was inspired by her.
Oh.
Yeah, and she even like told me that she was telling me one time, the first time that she saw the cover, she really thought this was her. Like literally her, and she was asking me if I showed the artist her picture.
Oh.
No, definitely not. You just think it's you.
Well,
But
that's the way you captured her, I guess.
yeah, I think she felt like she was really captured in the story, and yeah, that was really fun. So yeah, that's how I was. Like, it was totally inspired by my sister. It's totally inspired by my family.
Oh.
But the other aspects of it is just like mishmash of people I've encountered in life. So it's just a sister, the main character, and there. So
Wonderful.
yeah, thanks.
Remy?
So kind of like Gail. So I have siblings too. So I have 4 siblings actually. But in my book there are only 2 brothers because it would be hard to write about 5 siblings, I would say.
Well, I can't imagine living with 5 of them.
Yeah. And I'm the middle kid, and I just wanted to show this page. That's where when the brothers fight, when they kick each other and punch each other, and that's really how my siblings and I.
That's like my kids.
Yeah. So the relationship between the siblings is inspired by my own relationship with my siblings. And also because this is an immigration story about these 2 kids who moved to Australia. So and about the sacrifices that their parents made to give them a better life. So that is also kind of inspired by my own life because my parents also immigrated and then worked really hard to give us better opportunities. Yeah, but none of the characters in the book are like exact replicas of any family members. They're more like mix and match to suit the story.
Yeah, I think it's the safest.
Yeah.
You can't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Tiff, do you want to go next?
Sure. All of my books are truly family heavy. Like that's something that I could not get away from writing. It just kind of bleeds into my work. So even my first 3 books, which were romance, which is basically between a couple, there was still like the family all around, there's like this external pressure of family all the time because it's essentially the way that I grew up with my family. It's just
You
nonstop.
grew up in Quezon City. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And so, but my most recent Once Upon a Sunset is a mother-daughter story. And it's 2 women who are trying to figure out who they are. And I think that is really definitely an experience that I have felt, right? Because I immigrated here when I was very young, when I was 9, and I'm an American citizen. So there's this dual, identity that I had to struggle with. And my ladies, they have to go back to the Philippines and find family. But what happens is that they find themselves at the same time. So it's a little bit of a, that's how family kind of bleeds into that, is by figuring out your family, and you kind of figure out a lot more about yourself. So, but I totally didn't go into the plot. So Once Upon a Sunset, it is about a mom and a daughter, 76-year-old Margot and 40-year-old Diana, who find out that they have more family than they had anticipated. They thought that the grandfather, or Margot's dad, had died in World War II when actually he lived. And they now have to go to the Philippines and trace that family tree, and in the process find themselves. So that's the elevator pitch.
I love it. All right, Sheetal.
Yes. So my book is about this 7-year-old girl, Anjali, who this starts out with her being her birthday, and she gets a bike, which is very exciting. It's what she's always wanted. And her best friends go on their bikes and go to their school carnival, and they all want to get matching license plates for their bikes. And she can't find one with her name on it. And to make things worse, she gets bullied for it. She gets made fun of, people saying to her, "You're never going to find someone like you will never have your name in one of these things." And so she goes home and tells her parents that she's changing her name. And her mom goes into her room and explains to her what her name means, where it came from. She still kind of doesn't buy it. But when she goes to sleep, she kind of has a brain bloom and wakes up to kind of figure out how to handle this on her own, and stands up for herself and makes her own license plate. And at the end, she realizes that she would never change it, because being different is actually what makes her special. And so she's always going to be Anjali. And it's interesting. I personally have had this kind of thing in my life since I was a kid, up until it continues to happen, where people think I should change my name or tell me to change my name, especially when I started out as an actress. I was told that I would have to change my name in order to work. I lost jobs because I refused to. So it's a theme that I find to be sadly still relevant, which is why I wrote the book, because I feel like kids shouldn't ever feel like they're not enough. And the characters in the book, the family, very much for me was about setting a new narrative and a new normal, and kind of breaking the stereotypes of what people imagine Indian people to be, and really showing a new normal and a different story of what that was. So I specifically broke a lot of the stereotypes that I think people imagined. And so there's a lot of Easter eggs in the book that some people will get and some won't, but they're all very carefully placed about the family and about, quote, tradition and culture that I think people are accustomed to seeing, but not necessarily from authentic voices.
I think that's so important. I think that's so much of why we all write.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because we're missing those authentic voices, and we're all giving it. So, so that leads into my next question. You did such a great job of telling us more about Anjali. How does she fit into her family?
Well, so it's her and her brother. She's got a little brother that we see a little bit of. And as the series continues, you're going to see kind of more of that fill out. But right now it's her trying to figure out who she is in the world of what's been presented to her. And so I think we're along for the ride in this book. As in the subsequent books, everything that I've mapped out, she's definitely more confident and sure of herself, and we move on to other things. But I think right now we're really trying to figure out where she fits herself.
Mm-hmm. Which can't always happen in a book.
Which can't always happen. And by the way, will change as well. And, you know, these questions will continue to arise in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. So similar question for the rest of you. And I know that Tif and Remy, in your books specifically, your main characters go on a journey across the world because of their relationship with their family or what they're searching for. So can you talk a little bit more about that, how your main character fits in with their family, and then what they're sort of searching for in the book. And we can start with Tif.
Sure. It's definitely a fish out of water situation. And I think what it is that when you feel like a fish out of water in one situation, here in the United States, you think that if you get somewhere else, that you'll fit exactly there too. And then you figure out that you don't exactly fit the way you think you do. And my character, this happens to both my characters in their own ways. They know that they're different here in the United States. They were born here, they were raised by white American mom, but there's always that missing piece. And they think they found it, and they think that is the answer to all of these questions, and that will solve, heal all of these wounds that they've had, growing up. And they go to a new place hoping that that's the place where they'll exactly fit, and that they don't exactly fit there either. And I think it's from an adult perspective, and that happened with me. So I was, I grew up here, and like in my teens, I really went through this change where I really questioned, okay, I'm a Filipino American, but I was born in the Philippines, but I'm an American citizen, but I don't fit here really. It was a very confusing time. I went back over there and figured out that I didn't fit there exactly the way I thought either. But you do fit in some ways. There are people there that love you. There are people there that will accept you. And you kind of create this new identity for yourself where you are okay not to fit exactly where you think you need to fit. And then they learn that where they really fit are with the people who love them. That this concept of family is not related to a place per se, but it's the people that surround you and that support you. So for me, it was a really complicated thing because they're grown-ups, right? It's very, the nuance of, okay, you've known your past and you know your family history and you've lived so long, and then what do you do from now until the rest of your life? So that's what my book was about. So
it's beautifully said. And that definitely is a theme in the books that I write too, because growing up Chinese American, my parents were born in China, both immigrated here before. I'm one of five, so before my siblings and I were born. And so we would go to school, we would speak English, we would go home. Both my grandparents lived with us. We would only speak Chinese at home. And then it was very confusing. It felt like it didn't quite fit in at school, didn't quite fit in at home. So I definitely get that.
Yeah, and definitely like generational thing. My brothers are 5 and 6 years younger than me. And it's interesting, right? Because their experiences are different than mine. Because those 5 years is huge. I was 9 when I moved here, and they were 5 and 4, or 4 and 3, whatever. And they don't remember anything. So they don't have that yearning, right? Whereas I was 9 and just enough to remember so much. So it's really, it's interesting. And it's writing this book and being able to talk to just the personal experiences of my own family members. I learned so much. So
wonderful. Remy?
I just wanted to say something about what Tif said. So about what you said, Katrina, too. I'm of Chinese descent, but I was born Indonesian and moved here and there. So I'm kind of all over the place with like what I think my identity is. But I think as I grow older, one of the best parts about growing older is that you just don't really give that much about it anymore. I censored myself there. But my first book it touched a lot on immigration, so that's the journey that they made. But then after I wrote this book about immigration, I decided I don't want to write about immigration anymore for now. So I did my second one, which is about this boy who lives in Australia, but he's of Chinese descent, but he lives in Australia, and his family treats him like a baby, even though he's 12 years old. So to prove to his family that he's not a baby anymore, he goes on this he goes on an international flight to visit his dad in Singapore, and just without them knowing that he's gone on this flight. So that's the journey that he made. As far about how he fits into his family, he's treated like a baby, I guess, but then he also kind of feel like he's not really heard or seen within the family. So that's something that he has to learn in the journey. And one of the ways how I fit in, like, one of the ways in which because when I read books, sometimes I see like how families like, solve problems by talking a lot, heart to heart. And that really doesn't happen in my family. It's like never. So I always wonder, what does this even happen? So when I write my books, like there's very little like heart to heart talking, and I don't think anybody ever said "I love you" in my books, but they show it in like different ways, like giving somebody cooking food for somebody or something like that. I think that's how it's showing my family. I remember when I was writing this book, there was a scene that I first wrote in my earlier draft of the mom hugging the kid. And that I realized that later is something that I actually learned from like the media, but doesn't really happen to my family. Like, I mean, my mom hugged us when we were kids, but not when we were older. So like, I was like, oh no. So that I took out the hug. So I don't know if like maybe some kids who have the same experience as I did would see that in my books and think that it's perfectly okay. It's totally normal. There are different ways to show love and care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I totally relate. When I wrote Grandpa Grumps, it was the same thing. It was based off of like me and my grandfather, because he can't, he never hugged us and he always seemed really grumpy to me. And so it's really a book about how you can connect across generations and cultures when words fail, because we couldn't speak the same language really. My Cantonese was really choppy. He didn't speak English, and he showed his love through his cooking. And that's how I knew that he loved me. And so it's funny you say that. It took my grandma maybe 25 years before she let us hug her. But now it's really funny because my kids, so her great grandkids, they'll come over and she just, wide arms, she'll like go and hug them. But it took her a long, long time to feel really comfortable with that. It's really interesting.
Mine is like, oh my God, I kind of feel like now my family is so melodramatic. We had lots of heart-to-hearts, especially when I was a teenager, like when I'd go home drunk and then my mom is going to be sitting here in the living room, like sit down and like, okay.
That sounds like my parents. That sounds like my mom.
Our heart to heart about me, like, do you want to throw your life away, drinking, going home like at 3 a.m., something like that.
I think that's super great because there's not, so my experience doesn't represent the whole Asian experience. So I like to see that, other experiences. Yeah.
We had lots of like, sometimes they are screaming.
How many times did you get drunk?
I know. Gail,
let's not talk about that, Remy. Not now. I'll tell you later.
This is turning into a whole different kind of
like off broadcast.
Topic.
All right. Well then, so Gail, you sort of led us into our next question, which is, how is your family different now than it was growing up, or is it different?
Actually, it is, because a few years ago, I think that's like 14 years ago, I think my mom suffered a really a major stroke. So like half her body was paralyzed, and she had like really she had trouble speaking. So there was some kind of a role reversal between the two of us. And interestingly, like before, I used to write like short stories back then. It was always like the mother, the parents are kind of like, make characters, put them up on pedestals. And then after that experience, somehow they are like on equal footing. Kind of like in My Fate According to the Butterfly is like the interesting thing about it is that Sab, the main character, sees her father and puts him on a pedestal so much that it angers the older sister. And then when she finds out things about her father, and she just, she felt like she couldn't believe that he isn't as perfect as she thought he was. So it's kind of like that in my case, and like with the role reversal thing, like it's just so different when your mom, whom you're used to like talking to, like running to every time. I think I had one of those lucky teen. Probably that's why I couldn't write YA properly because I just couldn't uh, put so much angst into it because my teenage years were kind of quite happy, and mainly because of my mother, because usually every time I have a problem, may it be a boy problem, like dating problems, I just go up to her and say, hey, I have a problem, and what do you think? So I was just so used to her solving things for me, and it was kind of different having to be the one to take care of her. And I think that's the thing that really influenced a lot of my books now, is that they're no longer in pedestals, and like they also need like to be taken care of one way or another. Even like even though most of my characters are like, actually all of my characters are 11 or 12, somehow in this story it comes out that the kids can in some way take care of their parents as well, in different ways, that they are able to, like, they are basically part of a system, like a unit. They're not just there freeloading on on and freeloading on in the family. They are there for as part of the family, as a unit, and not just like just somebody who needs to be taken care of. So yeah, I think that's the thing that really influenced my writing, and like really changed from who my mom and I are now, from it and who we were back then. So yeah, that's
I think that's
Just to
really
jump in there, Gail, I just want, because I have 4 children. So I have a 10 and 14, 17, and 19-year-old. And so we've been here in this house like for 2 months now, right?
oh
All
my
6
god.
of us. But I always I've told a lot of people that my children have taken care of me. Like even my 10-year-old has taken care of her older siblings. It's really interesting how if you really watch them, and like if you take off the parent hat, because my natural thing is to always put a parent hat, and so I see my kids as my children. But if I take off my parent hat, like, and if I really watch them, they are not only are they taking care of each other, but they take care of their dad, they take care of me.
Yeah.
So that's really poignant that you say that, and I think that's, my daughter has read your book, by the way, and she loves it.
Thank you.
And that she probably sees that. Do you know what I mean? The concept of everybody taking care of one another, So
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that's so beautiful that it made its way into your writing as well, because I do think a lot of readers will find so much comfort in that. I know I'm a teacher as well, and I know so many students who, in addition to being 8 and 9 and just trying to be a kid, are also taking on other roles as well, caretaker roles, and so I think that for them to feel seen in a story too is really powerful. Sheetal, so you have children. Has that changed the way that you write, that you view the world?
Yes, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, so they're very, very little. And I mean, I started writing children's books because, I always wrote, but, this medium found me because I was pregnant with my first. And I just did not feel like the worlds that we were living were represented in the books in a way that I wanted to read to them. And so they very much are why I'm writing. But yeah, I find with my own family, it changes because now I'm a mom. And so the dynamic has changed because I have my own children. I think that my parents see me differently. I think I see them differently. I think having my kids around allow for a buffer in a way that allow for conversations to have sometimes a little bit safer because they're around and you kind of can talk about it in code a little bit. Similarly, in a lot of Indian families, we don't hug, we don't talk, we're not very emotional, we have that too. And so it's definitely interesting to see my parents, their grandparents, be with them in ways that they've never been with me. It's hysterical to see, actually. But it's nice. It's allowed for us to kind of find a new way of being with each other. And yeah, it's, we're still finding our way, and for me, my writing is very much about moving forward from kind of the first generation story. I feel like we've seen that, heard that, been there, done that a lot, at least for me. And so for me, it's about like the books are like as if I had kids. What is that like? Someone who's having kids as a first generation for the first time in a country where I was born here, but I'm still very much defined and have a huge culture that's a part of who I am, and how do we balance that in a different way so it's not very much the first generation story. And I feel like this narrative is more interesting to me and less mind so far.
Wonderful. Great. All right. Well, my next question is if you can share more about a memorable family moment, whether it's funny, sad, surprising, happy, all of the above, that's either made its way into a book or you're hoping it'll make its way into a future book. Remy, do you want to start this one?
It didn't make it into my book, but it made it into an article in the Horn book, into a comic. It's when I was, so I have 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers, and when we were kids, so I used to try to be the good kid just so that I could stand out from them, so that my mom would like me more. But that was really hard because because they were always trying to get me into trouble. But there was this one time where my elder sister, because we had a babysitter and we didn't like the babysitter, so my older sister said, let's play a prank on them, on the babysitter. So her prank was to, this is gonna be kind of gross. The prank was to pee into like bags, plastic bags.
It is gross.
It is gross.
Thank God I already have breakfast.
And lay down on the floor, and for the babysitter to come in and slip on the bag of pee.
Oh my gosh.
but it kind of backfired because my mom came home, so we kind of panicked and then we ran, and then my sister actually slipped on the bag and she got pee all over her.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that didn't make it into the book, but I made it into the Horn book. So yeah.
Oh my goodness.
God, definitely there aren't any PE moments. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it. Funny enough, I don't think there isn't any. Probably the only ones would be the dog in my second book, the relationship, and the things. Oh my, Remy is looking at me. I feel like Remy is judging me. She's read my second book. And she actually the thing that it's mostly the dog's relationship with the family itself. I remember it was mentioned in the story that the dog in the story, whose name is Kidlat, had this squeakless turtle stuffed toy. My dog also had a squeakless turtle stuffed toy. And the reason why it was squeakless because my mom hated the sound of squeak, 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 squeak. like it was incessant squeaking. So what she did is she did surgery on the toy and like took out the squeaking this squeaking thing and then just sewed it back in, sewed it back together, and then gave it back to the dog, and the dog still liked it. Basically, that little thing that was inserted in this story, and that really happened with in our family, like because generally our my mom, my dad, everyone, even my sister, even my husband are all animal lovers. So I grew up with at least minimum of 5 dogs all the time. So yeah, so definitely animals play a role in my story. I cannot imagine like writing a household without at least one pet.
Mm.
At least one pet. So it's so that kind of thing. Like mostly it was the misadventures with the animals that goes into the book, because I think that the personal stuff, we might be expressive between us, like between me and my mom and my dad, but I feel like those things that happen should stay within the household. Like they're special, and I feel like I just want to hold on to it. I don't know what I mean. So that's why a lot of the things that really happen to my family don't go into the books that I read, and like I kind of like jealously guard them. So yeah, probably just like probably a similar experience, but not exactly something like that. So yeah, well, I'm kind of weird. We have a weird, we have a weird family, so that's why. Yeah.
Tiff, does anything come to
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah. So I was just thinking just now. So the first scene of Once Upon a Sunset, so Diana is an OBGYN, and it's a super busy night, and like there's a million deliveries going on, and she's like running from one room to the other delivering babies. And then she like does a detour through the nurse's station where she like picks up food. So I was a registered nurse in my past life, and like the nurse's station is like always filled with some kind of food. All the nurses always come and bring food. Anyway, so she goes up to her room and she's trying to clean up. And one of the nurses asks, a Filipino nurse asks her, did you eat? And then she said, yeah, I really loved your food. Thanks so much for making this thing. And she's like, oh, I bet your mom makes that food also. It's lumpia, right? And so because Diana is, she's a quarter Filipino, her mom's half Filipino. And she goes, yeah, but my mom makes it really weird, and it really does remind me of the fact, like how these through the generations, like the recipes, when it's passed down, is kind of altered a little bit. Mm-hmm. And especially if you are separated from the family, right? So
Yeah.
My mom was separated from her whole family in the Philippines. She kind of altered her way of cooking, and then she taught me. And then at 18, I moved because I was in the Army, and I moved, and I had my family. And so my stuff is like so different. So there was a time I was like comparing recipes with my brothers who are just better cooks than me. But, so I compared recipes with them, and it was so different. Like, because I would just pick up whatever ingredients that I could, that I would pick up at the local grocery store.
Yeah,
if we lived in Germany, there wasn't like a million Filipino stores in Germany.
I doubt you can get like calamansi in there.
Like you're just kind of replacing.
It's not easy to replace.
No. So when I ended up I told my dad, I'm like, this is how I make my chicken adobo. And he's just like, what is that? Like oyster sauce. And like, what is going on? But yeah, so I think that's funny. And it's a nuance, right? Like no one would understand if they said, well, my mom makes it kind of weird, but it's true. Like my kids will have a different version. Like when my kids grow up and they're half Filipino, when they have their families, they'll probably cook something completely. I mean, I would hope that they follow what I do, but they're gonna tweak it somehow, I think, to
Speaking
whatever the
speaking of
family.
which, and I'm hopefully if it gets approved, my next book will have like a recipe for yema bowls. So
Oh, see,
yeah,
I always look for recipes. Like I'm always like, is this the real thing? Like for
and
example,
this
yeah, so,
recipe is my recipe. So
oh, I love it. Okay, then
yeah.
I'm gonna make it. I don't know. It's that is my funny story.
I totally get what she means. Like it's also the availability of the ingredients. Like
Mhm.
probably like
Yeah.
my mother-in-law before she passed on, she immigrated to New Zealand, and
Mm.
she was just like when she was there, she was like, I cannot find calamansi.
Oh yeah,
It's
there's
like
no way.
it's like a really small lime, but really really potent. It's a small lime. It's this big, but it's equivalent to I think like a two lemons something.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
it's really.
you just can't find it, and she tried growing it in New Zealand. It just won't grow.
Mm.
So it's this kind of thing, and like and then when she got here, she just kept on eating stuff in calamansi because she just she can't have it in New Zealand. So probably that's one of the reasons why it becomes different. It's because the
Yeah,
availability of the ingredients in the area.
right, right. And it's just stubbornness or knowledge or forgot.
Yeah.
Just winging it.
Hey, come
Mhm.
on, make calderetas like habanero. That's like not normal, right? It's not like the usual caldereta that you have. It's like the caldereta is it's a beef stew. It's usually spicy. It's spiced. The spiciness usually it's very subtle. Comes from the bird's eye chili, which is usual here. Like birds like poop the seed, and you're just gonna be surprised that your backyard has bird's eye chili already. You suddenly just have bird's eye chili plants in your backyard. But the one that I'm using is like habaneros, just because I just want to have a different, take on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's one of the reasons, probably. Like,
It's funny. There's a scene in the book where Anjali's having dinner with her parents, and when the illustrator was illustrating it, I would send her reference photos and things. I was just so you know, in this family, they're going to, even though they're having, say, maybe pasta, there's going to be like these different bowls that have these chutneys in it and these things in here and all these, again, little Easter eggs that came from,
Yeah.
real life, because those are those little gems that kind of
Mhm.
make the book. And I
Mhm.
also, obviously the premise of the book, which I explained before, is based on myself and a lot of my friends, and this idea of feeling like you have to compromise yourself. But all the names in all of my books always, for the most, I would say 95% of them are related to someone real with that name in my life. And when I finally decided that Anjali was going to be the name of my main character, I had a few friends with that name who I reached out to and asked them, was there something that you were made fun of, like with your name? What was it? What was the thing that people would do to your name? And every single one of the Anjalis had the exact same story, which is
Wow.
in the book.
Wow.
And so it's fascinating, right? Like the kids, we all find that thing, like we all deal
Yeah.
with whatever it is. There's, I don't know, somehow people just hook in and know how to get us.
Well, that's the importance of the name. The name is so important.
Mhm.
And how you trace back, not only the first name, but the last names, like how you trace back to where you come from. Yeah.
Yeah. Erasing your identity is not something, look, people do it, but it's just not something that I'm interested in.
Right.
I love that you're doing that, and that you're putting it in books so that other children can find that too. I think that,
I have to say,
really
like
need
every
that.
school visit I've done, and I've done a lot, I always start by asking anybody if they felt like they ever wanted to change something about themselves, because that's really what it's about. And every child raises their hand. And it's really about just telling kids that you're fine the way you are. You don't need to change anything.
Mm-hmm. I had a student when I taught fourth grade. I had a student who started the year with an American name that he chose for himself. He had immigrated from Mexico, and he didn't want to use his name. He said, "Oh, my friends are just calling me this. I'm just gonna say this is my name. And I said, well, is that what you want your name to be? Like, what do you want, what do you want me to call you? And he said, yeah, call me that. And then by the end of the year, he had finally, grown comfortable. And he said, he asked me, I think it was like in April, he was like, can you call me by my real name again? And I was like, okay. And so I did. And so, I think that's something that a lot of
it's amazing how many teachers make it worse, where they themselves don't know, they don't want to take the time. We all learn things all the time. We all learn how to say a lot of things. I think you can just take that extra time, but they don't. And they end up giving the child a nickname, or they shorten it, or in front of everyone, like, it's okay if I just call you this. And, it's tough, these young ones, to kind of say no, actually, but they don't know how to say that, and it's very much, there was PBS did this story on how much it stays with a child when you're not seen in that way, when your teacher doesn't take the time to actually call you by your name, the name that was given to you. The ramifications of that are long standing.
Actually, like, piggybacking on that, my legal name is very, very long. Let's just say that every time that I need to have an ID made, the encoder would be nervous if they're gonna have to adjust certain things for it, if it's gonna fit or not. And the thing is that when I was just starting to write, I think around 7, I usually spent too long writing my name because it's really long. So I remember a teacher told me, just don't include your middle name, your second name, because I have 2 names and they're both long. Just put in the first one. So it kind of stayed with me. So it kind of became a bit of a problem too later on in my life, because I was so used to writing just my first name. But legally, when you make documents, you have to include the second name because it's not going to be you anymore. And I can't remember how often I made so many mistakes, eating up filling up a bank form, and eating up everything for the first name, and then suddenly remembering, oh my god, oh yeah, I have a second name. I have to put that in, and so I can have a new form, and I need to write it again. So it kind of it's not as it really does affect you even later in life. And even up to now, I still have a hard time. Remember, I have to consciously remind myself that, Gail, you have a second name. So make sure that when you start writing on the form, you make space for that second name in that form. So it, even a simple thing as that, it kind of affects the way you do things. And then it's if I kind of wish, even though my name was long, I was allowed to just write it, write the whole thing. Even
One
though
thing I always suggest the teachers to do, because it's something that every child can do when they're always trying to get kids to write, is I say, why don't you have as an assignment, every child go home and ask their parents why they gave them the name that they did, because regardless of what it is, there's going to be a story behind it, whether it be funny or loving or silly or whatever. There's a reason, and that way everyone can feel connected to that, and feel that they are special.
Well, kind of bad idea for me, because my parents are kind of like jokesters, and every time I ask them, why is my first name Abigail, they would always tell me a different story. And I think my favorite one is one of them. I remember 2 actually. The first one, the most memorable ones, was that my dad saw my name while he was pooping in a public toilet. That was one. It was a vandalized on the bathroom stall. That was one. And the other one was when my mom was reading an adult comic book. So I wasn't sure which of those 2 I like better. Imagine
you could just choose to forget one of those stories.
I'd rather just called me. Just I don't want to find out anymore. I'm fine. It just gets wilder and wilder every time I ask them. So like, I just got to the point. You know what? No, whatever. You can just I'm named. My first name is Abigail, and that's just it's Abigail, and I don't really care where it came from because I wouldn't really know. And like and my mom right now, she has a hard time talking, and she still finds it in her to like think like make a joke out of it, like find a way that probably she'd point to like a I don't know, something random like an alcohol bottle. Like I found your name and I have an alcohol bottle or something. I
Aw.
never really knew, but it's funny. Like it's like it's an entirely different story every time you ask them. So they just kind of gave up and just let it be.
She clearly loves your name.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of like learned to enjoy it. What if it was true and then they did find my name on the stall? It scrolled in the, in the bathroom stall, right? And then like, well, my dad is pooping, so it's kind of like it's not
Oh
exactly
my
something
goodness.
that you can be proud of, but it's a nice story to tell.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was not an answer I was expecting, but I
Yeah, I know, right?
All right, I'm going to ask you all one last real question, and then we're going to do a lightning round of some fun questions. So my last real question is, we have a range of audiences that we write for, ranging from picture book all the way to adult in this panel. So I'm curious why you chose the age range that you write for. Was it a pivotal time in your life, or just why?
I don't know. It's just fun. It's like, yeah, like middle grade is fun. It's when
Yay!
yeah, right, and like kids ask the weirdest questions during that age, and you're most curious. And it's actually like those times that you start seeing your parents as more than just a giver of food or something, like a giver of toys, like someone who brings me to school. You see them as people, like who are not who loves you. That's why they're taking care of you. It's like that age when you start to actually see the world, and I find it fun, like that wonder, that sense of wonder in that age. That's why I love it so much. Like there's always this sense of of wonder, and and honestly, I kind of like that endings are almost always hopeful.
Mhm.
I get really sad with sad endings, so there. It's probably that. But it's the sense of wonder. It's hard to it's hard to replicate it in other age groups because they these kids are just starting to have like freedom, but still a bit uh controlled. Like it's still safe. So there's like that kind of trying to balance that. It's interesting. So I think Remy would agree with me because like like
Yeah.
I've read her book, and like a lot of them are like testing boundaries. I mean, come on, what how boundary testing, like the two boys left on their own trying to bake, like risking the house going up in flames. So it's a kind of like curiosity that it's really in this age group that's really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think the writing for middle grade makes like when you go do school visits is super fun.
Yeah,
Because,
definitely.
yeah, my favorite parts about school visits would be the Q&A because
Q&A. Oh my god, I
you can
love
never predict what they're going to ask. It's always really
I
funny.
don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
come
but
on.
then
Like, yeah,
yeah, but
definitely.
then they're old enough for you to kind of go deeper into things. Also,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, speaking of which, the school visits. I mean, come on. a kid just asked me before, why do you like ducks? It's like one of the most existential questions that I had to answer. I mean, why do I like ducks? I know I have them. Why do I like them? It made me think for a bit.
I think the
What is
funniest.
question?
When I go to schools, I sometimes talk to them about my dog who likes to roll in poop. And one kid asked me, "So when your dog rolls in poop, do you roll with him?" Yeah, that's just
Poop is a universal thing with all kids. They're obsessed with it everywhere you go.
Yes, I know this very well. Boys and girls, yes.
Yes.
Just ask my 3-year-old.
Farts.
Yes.
Farts. That's another thing. Another
Yes, I live
universe.
with teenagers. So yes, that is definitely still happening to this day.
My kindergartner was Zooming with her class, and my 3-year-old son video Zoom bombed her and just came in and said to her teacher, "Do you like poop? Poop, 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 poop." Oh, no.
It's interesting to listen to you guys talk, because I agree. I think, the older the kids get, you can get deeper into conversations about things. But I very much love, the age group that I have, because what I found is that they want to talk about real things. And I think too often they're given books that don't give them the benefit of that, and so they're given books about animals or this or that or whatever, and they really want to have an access point to deal with whatever other stuff they're dealing with. And so for me, my books generally take on, say, quote, larger themes in an age appropriate way, and I end up having really, really amazing conversations with 5 to 9-year-olds, that blow my mind, because they are thinking about it. You just have to give them a chance to talk about it, because they're thinking and dealing with stuff already, sadly, as young as 5.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get an agent with a YA book, and it didn't work. So I just kept writing. It was one of those things where one day I would love to write YA. And then I just kept, you just keep writing, right? Because you don't want to give up. And then it was with my adult book that I got an agent. So that's where I am now. But I love writing romance because there is a happily ever after in the end. And I also, like you, Gail, like my books to have happily ever after. So all of my books, even if they're contemporary fiction, end with a happily ever after, because I can't. I can't write it, nor unless I know it's like a true thriller, like suspense, where I know going in that there's going to be some killing and there's going to be some people dying. You know what I mean? Then I'm good, but I don't like any big surprises.
Oh, sorry, off topic. Like, Tif, did you watch, have you seen, the Netflix Korean telenovela, Memories of the Alhambra?
No. Should
Oh my
I watch
God.
it?
No, don't.
No. Okay, good.
I just the ending destroyed me.
I need warnings.
Definitely, I don't think
Well, Gail, you're leading me right into our first lightning round question, which is we're all, I think, watching a lot more TV right now because there's not much else to do. So if your main character watches TV, or if they don't in your book, what would their favorite TV show or movie be right now?
Well, Sab, the main character of my debut, would probably watch something like DuckTales or something. Anything with ducks. She loves ducks. She has that duck, so it's probably gonna be like a duck. But for me, it's Crash Landing on You right now.
I finished that. I love it.
But if you ask Gail, it's Crash Landing on You. I'm totally obsessed with Hyun Bin. I don't know. Sorry.
He still looks the same from when he acted in The Diary in that show. Can't remember it.
I know. He looks
the same.
But he's a different person. Still hot though. So anyway, sorry. we were asking about the main character of my book, but
okay. For me, for the main character for my debut, he would probably watch SpongeBob SquarePants.
I can totally imagine.
Yeah, I still watch SpongeBob SquarePants. So
No judgment. I kind of like watch them too. So definitely no judgment on
I love
Remy
it.
with that. No judgment.
What
So
about yours?
the mom, she's 76 years old, right? And so she's an influencer, like a social media. She's a mature social media influencer. So I'm thinking that she's like watching Real Housewives. She's always watching that. And then Diana, she's 40 and she's super serious. So I'm thinking she's either not watching TV or she's watching some kind of docuseries. I don't know. Yeah, she's not watching
Sounds like
TV
my
though.
husband.
Yeah.
I would say Anjali probably would watch a show like Molly of Denali, which I think is really great and does a really good job. And movie-wise, she would be all about the Free Willies. It's an oldie.
Is that
It's
the one
Love
with the
Free Willy.
that type of
Yeah,
movie.
Vanilla.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. Everyone watching, remember that you can learn more about the authors and their books on the Asian Author Alliance website, which is asianauthoralliance.com, to learn more about this month's book panels and also the creators. But thank you all, everyone, for being here. This was wonderful. And each author has a website too, so you can also check out their individual websites. All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
bye.
Bye.